Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters at 10. My name is Paul Meyert. I'll be your host today. Morning Matters is part of the Acts 17 Accord, a ministry committed to preparing God's people to live righteous, spirit-filled lives to the end of the age. Our mission is really to come alongside the church and build the church up, members of the body of Christ. We're basically a foundational ministry. We believe in foundational doctrines, teachings, practices, things that we believe are necessary to live a godly life. And I believe that foundationally, the many things that we have to deal with, and there are many, many things going on in the world today, we really need to understand what the Bible teaches. And I believe the Bible is the foundation of the Christian faith. Now people say, oh, I love Jesus, I want to follow Jesus. Well, the only way you know Jesus is through the Scriptures. So the Scriptures, we must understand the Scriptures properly. We've been spending the last few weeks on Genesis and really the greatest lie ever told, the lie of long ages of time, the deception that I believe comes through that. We have we spent several weeks on that. We're going to try to finish it today. Maybe next week we'll talk about Israel and what's going on with the Palestinian conflict. Either that, or we'll talk about immigration. We'll be doing those over the next couple of weeks. So I want to continue this conversation today, and I realize that it's this is a hard topic. I just got to tell you. I have a conversation with friends this week, and many online people complaining and saying this and that, and I've been called false teacher and all sorts of things, and that's fine. I don't really care what people really think, but I do believe this is a critical issue. But it's also really difficult. It's difficult to talk about something that we disagree with, and I've been trying to figure out, Lord, what do we say? I mean, what do we do? I mean, is there any topic that's not controversial? Should we meet on Saturday or Sunday? That's controversial. We had a Bible study. We talked about that and kind of got into a little bit of a, not a tussle or anything, but just, back and forth over it. And what's the answer? Well, does it matter? You can meet, Paul said ultimately in that case, it doesn't really matter. You can meet on Saturday or Sunday. I believe he teaches that in Colossians. But there are other topics. How do you baptize? Does it matter? There's all kinds of topics. Some that are very important. Can you have sex before marriage? Can you have gay marriage? Can you have, transgenderism and all of that whole mess? And then you've got, there's just a number of topics, and all of them have some level of controversy on it. And so you think as a teacher, well, I don't want to have controversy with people. I want to just, you want to get along, you want to be nice, all of those sorts of things. Well, it's not always possible. Jesus said he came to bring a sword and to bring division. There is division because of Jesus. There's division because of truth. Everything is not right. Whatever you believe is not right just because you believe it. Just because I believe it doesn't make it right. The foundation of it has to be somewhere. And that foundation, to me, in my understanding of the world and the worldview, it's found in the Scriptures. And I think that the first 11 chapters of Genesis are foundational for almost everything that we believe in the Christian faith. It affects everything. The sin, the fall, what's the role of men and women? What's the, immigration is affected by it. The division of the nations is affected by it. The flood, was it a genuine earthwide or worldwide flood? Or does that matter? Well, just believe what you want. No, I think these things matter, and I think they affect our doctrines and our understandings. It's like, and I say this, there are many old earth creationists who have a great walk with God, love Jesus, and spend their life serving him. But there's millions more. If you take liberal Christianity and you look at what liberalism was 110 years ago and what is progressive Christianity today, number one thing that they reject is evolution, creationism. They reject creationism. Now, like I say, many old earthers have kind of figured out a way to make Genesis fit with the conventional paradigm of an old earth. But so many millions have not. This is a foundational doctrine. It's the first two books of the Bible, and it's such a powerful teaching. It's such a powerful narrative. If you take Genesis 1 through the end of the Bible, you have a 6,000-year narrative of time. And that is in complete conflict and contradiction with scientific worldview. They can't, in my mind, they cannot be resolved. Now, if I was convinced science was right, I might have a little different view of that. I've got something tickling in my nose. I might have a different view, but I'm not convinced that's true. So the issue is, to me, there's two issues. Number one, is science right when it says the earth is billions of years old? Number two, is the Bible right when it says the earth is 6,000? They can't both be true. I choose the Bible. Number one, because that's what it says. Now, if it said 6 million, if it didn't have all the details, maybe we could fudge on that. But it gives you lots of details that I think are scientific and I think that are factual or narrative. Science has made several problems, and they have several problems with their viewpoint. Again, it's naturalism, uniformity, anti-supernaturalism, anti-catastrophism. All of these philosophies and belief systems came into prominence after Charles Lyell and others wrote. So today, I'm going to go ahead and just go through Genesis, and we're going to look at a couple of things that I think are really important. We'll try to just read through it and get some answers from it. I believe I believe that Scriptures dogmatically teach the earth is young. Now, some people said, well, that doesn't even teach that at all. No, it does. If you take the 6 days of creation, you take all of the genealogies from Genesis 5 through Genesis 11, and you add them up, and you add all of that time from it, gives you specific dates, ages, how long people lived, etc. Okay? Now, some people don't believe people could have ever lived that long. Well, I don't think that's true. I think we could have lived that long. I think we could live forever. There's no reason our bodies have to decay and die, right? Only because of sin. That's the only reason that happens and what's happened to the world. But we could probably live forever. There's people who live a long time now, and not hundreds and hundreds of years, but still 120 people. I've heard stories of people who live 150 years. Anyway, the point of it is that it's a narrative, and it goes through and it gives us a picture. So you got 2,000 years between Adam and Abraham, 2,000 years between Abraham and Christ, and 2,000 years. So I believe that is the biblical worldview. That's what the Bible most clearly teaches. I'm not saying it's the only way to understand that, but I'm saying that's the most clear interpretation. So in me, that's a dogmatic teaching. I think it clearly teaches that, and we have to go through that. Again, we talk about, does it matter? Yeah, I think it does matter. And there's a couple reasons. Last week or the week before, I can't remember which week before, I gave you 8 reasons why. Let's see if I put this in here. 8 reasons why I believe it matters. Okay, I gave you I won't go into them again, but I left one out. It was kind of surprising. By the way, I put some resources on our website. You can go there. We've got a bunch of resources. I got about 8 videos of Is Genesis History from them. I also have a video from Babylon B with an interview with Jason Lyle, who's a doctored astrophysicist. And he's really good. I like this guy a lot. He's got a really good, strong biblical worldview, and he's very articulate. And I would encourage you guys to watch that. I mean, I've given a lot of the same arguments. I didn't get those necessarily from him because I just watched this video, but there are arguments that I've seen from a number of other places, that I think deal with the age of the earth. But he gave two things that I didn't give to you, and so I'm going to give you those today. The first reason, this is his first reason why this matters, and I agree with that. I knew this, but I just forgot to teach it. So I'm going to teach it now. So here we go. The Bible teaches that death came into the world because of man's sin. And, in Genesis chapter, I didn't put this verse out, excuse me. Let me find it here real quick. This is not a good way. Let me see if I have it in. No, here we go. Here's the Bible. All right, let's go to... We're going to look at this. This is Genesis. It's going to be in chapter 3. So let's go to Genesis chapter 3. Sorry about that. I should have put this out. I meant to, but I didn't get back to it. Now the serpent was more crafty, this is verse 1, than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God actually say to you, you shall not eat of the tree in the garden, of any tree in the garden? Okay, so here's Satan. Now, he came as a serpent. Now, was that a literal snake that talked? I really don't know. I think it's conceivable that he could have, God had a donkey talk to Balaam, and there's a couple other times when, animals are talking, supernaturally God does something. I think more likely it probably has something to do with, maybe a metaphor. He would come like a snake, like a serpent, like we have that saying today. But it doesn't matter. It could be either way. I know Dr. Michael Heiser has a view on that, and I haven't read all of it. I was in the process of reading that. But this serpent, Satan, spoke to Eve and said, "Did God actually say to you, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said you are not to eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You shall not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a light to the eyes, that the tree was desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband who was with her. So Adam and Eve were together in the garden. We talked about this, and we'll come back and teach on it again, but they were both there when Eve was deceived. Eve was deceived, and the Bible says she sinned, 1 Timothy 2. Then the eyes of both of them were open, and they knew that they were naked. They sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths out of these... They sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths. They made the first clothes were cloth. They weren't. Okay, so what's happening here? So this is imperative. It says, God said, "You shall not," verse 3, "but you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." And the idea of here is that it's dying, you shall die. Because Adam and Eve did not die immediately, but dying. They died, actually. Their bodies, death entered into the world at this point when they took of the fruit. Dying, you shall die. Right? And then let's look at, let's move this over. We'll pull this back. Let's look in Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 5. Here Paul says, "For while we were still helpless, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly. For rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though a good person perhaps someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrated his own love to us in that while we were still sinners," when did we become sinners? In the garden. Adam and Eve became sinners, and we were in them, and we became sinners. God looked at us as if we were there, and every one of us would have made the same decision they did. Christ died for us much more than because we are... I'm in verse 9, by the way. "Because we have now been declared righteous by his blood, we will be saved through him from God's wrath. For if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, how much more, since we have been reconciled, will be saved by his life? Not only this, but we also rejoice in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we now received this reconciliation." This goes back to what happened in the garden. We were broken. Our relationship with God was broken. We physically began to die, and spiritually we died as well. Well, our spirits didn't die, but death ultimately means separation. So our spirit was separated from God, so that there was this wall between mankind and God. And this is fundamental Christianity. This is basic number one Christianity. Everything about Christianity starts with the sin nature of man. Well, it starts with God and his love and his curses. But on our perspective, I mean, it's all about sin. See, God, it's God's righteousness and our unrighteousness. And God bringing those two things together in Christ and to redeem mankind. That's his intention. He gave Adam and Eve free choice. He gives us free choice. We choose to do the things that we do. We have free will to do things that are disobedient to God. We have the right to do that. God gave you that. It's like people say, "How can God control everything?" He doesn't. He doesn't control you. Now, he can intervene in many ways and stop certain things from happening, but basically you have free will. You gotta say, "God, how can all-powerful God do this?" Well, he technically is all-powerful, but if he gives some of his power to you and I, then he's not powerful over that. He's let go of that. He's given that to us. That's what he did. So here's the key verse. "So then, just as sin entered the world through one man and death through sin, so death spread to all people because all have sinned. For before the law was given, sin was in the world, but there was no accounting for sin when there was no law. Yet death reigned from Adam until Moses, even over those who did not sin in the same way that Adam, who was a type of the coming one, transgressed." So from Adam on, death existed. There was no death before the fall. Now let's go back to Genesis. Let me find that verse here. Here we go. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. Now, I'm just going to read this to you. Now, I put a resource on our website as well. The resource is about the gap theory, and it's written by Don Williams. It's on Bible. I can't remember the name of it. I just took the link, put it there. If you're interested in studying the gap theory, it would be. I think it's worth doing. It's a good teaching on it. He gives you both. He gives you the view, and then he contradicts it. But we just need to read it. Most of you may not yet know what the gap theory is. We'll talk about that in just a second as we read. So let's just read Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, what the gap theory says, well, first of all, let's go this. What does it mean in the beginning? Well, I believe it's in the beginning of matter. It's the beginning of the material world. The material world did not exist before creation. In the beginning of all things, you could add, in the beginning of the creation of the heavens and earth, in the beginning of them, there was no matter before that. God is a spirit. He lives in a spiritual kingdom. Angels are spirits. Fallen angels and the principalities and powers and forces of darkness are all spiritual. They do not have corporal bodies like us. And corporal, I mean material. This is real. All these things are real. Air is real, right? Light, energy, space, everything is real. So in the beginning, I believe refers to the beginning of the creation of matter. And the Bible says that God spoke it into existence, ex nihilo. Out of nothing, he created everything. In other words, there was no material, there was no pre-atomic material, there was no already created, there was nothing. God created the heavens and the earth. He created all matter. And that's the realm that we live in. But when he created us, of course, he put our spirit in us, so we're a spirit and material and spiritual beings. We're both. Now, some people say that, there's three different ways to look at this. I'm not going to go into them. I look at it as simply an overview statement. He's just making a statement. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He's saying, I created it all. And then he goes in verse 2 and says, this is how I did it. This is my process. So, verse 2 says, the earth was without form and void. And darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. So, the gap theory, this is a belief that came about 1814. I don't remember the man's name. And this was even before Lyell and those guys published his work, The Principles of Geology. So we know that probably for several, maybe 100 years, 50 years at least, the theory of an old earth was being pushed around the world. People were arguing and discussing that. And of course, when Lyell and Hutton did their damage, they were kind of almost like anointed by the enemy, I believe, to make this thing really take off and to deceive the church. But people in the church were already being deceived. The gap theory was written by a man who wanted to harmonize the Bible. He wanted to harmonize the Bible with the old ages that were already being taught and believed in. And Lyell was the one who propagated it made it popular, but this thing already existed. So he says between verses 1 and 2, there is this gap. And the gap is an unknown period of time. But basically he's saying in the beginning, when God created the heavens and earth, it was perfect, right? Then something happened. There was some sort of fall. He says, well, maybe it was the angelic fall when Satan fell and went through this process. When Satan did the things that he did, led the angels in rebellion, and he came to the earth, and there was some sort of pre-human form, not exactly like us, but there were some sort of humans that lived on the earth, and the fall, and so God destroyed it all. And then in verse 2 or verse 3, then he starts to recreate. There's a lot of words they use that, and I have that article on there, and I just don't really want to go through it. But basically, the Hebrew words, they go, the earth was form and void. God didn't create void things without form. He didn't do that. The darkness represented demonic stuff. It was a spiritual darkness, and so there's this period of time that's written that existed in the gap theory between verses 1 and verses 2. Now, there are a lot of reasons why I disagree with that. Number one is the one we're talking about, where we just talked about. Where did sin and death come from? I mean, basically, any view that teaches that the day-age view teaches the same thing. that there was death and disease. So we had all these ages, and then somewhere along the line, all of this death and destruction, because they believe the fossils are millions of years old, which is incorrect. Fossils are not millions of years old. They have dated fossils. They found living tissue, stretchable tissue with carbon-14 in it, which it can't possibly be. Carbon-14 is virtually gone in its half-life, 5,780 years, or 30 years, whatever it is. It's virtually gone. It's certainly gone after 50,000 years or 100,000. They're gone completely. But we find lots of carbon in coal, which was a living thing. It was the trees that got crushed in the flood, and there's carbon in it. They were alive. They're not millions of years old at all whatsoever. In fact, it teaches the opposite. They find diamonds buried in the center of the earth. They've broken them up and found DNA or found carbon-14 in them, and it's all over the place. And so, there's some questions about that doesn't answer every possible thing. Dr. Lyle talks about that a little bit more, but the point of it is, it's in and of itself, it disproves the age of the earth. They're wrong. They can date a rock that has a radiometric dating of millions of years, but still has DNA in it, and things in it. Fossils that have DNA in it in the same rock. Well, it can't be. So basically, it's nonsense that all this happened. But you have to believe, if you're saying that Genesis 1 and 2, there's this big gap, you have to say that death and destruction happened before sin. Because Adam doesn't come until, what verse is that? Let's see here. Actually chapter 3 when he sins, right? So way after all these millions of years. So they try to fit everything in, again, to compromise and to get along with science, because they believe that science has proved the earth is old. Again, it's not old. I believe that's a lie. It's just a deception. And it was intentional. Lyle did that intentionally and deceived the world. So basically, read that article if you want to. If you really doubt me, read the article by Don Williams. It's on the website. It's under a blog, the latest blog I posted. I just put a link on it. Okay, so let's go ahead with my view, which is, in the beginning, he created the heavens and earth. Overview statement. He created everything, right? And I think even if you say he created the heavens and the earth, that doesn't contradict what is happening later. Because if he created the heavens and the earth, it doesn't mean he hadn't created light, he didn't create the sun, he just created the heavens, which is space. He created space. He created what we call the universe. The Bible calls it the heavens. And there's 3 heavens, but there's also the atmosphere and all of this stuff that's going on. So he created that. And then, when he goes on, he says the earth itself, meaning this globe that he created the globe was without form and void. It was empty. It was not empty, but it was not made for, it had not reached its fulfillment. Why? At this point, it was just a globe spinning. I believe it was a globe. He would have created it as a circle. I don't believe in a flat earth. It was a circle, and it was spinning, and it was a mixture. In it was a mixture of water and minerals and dirt and all of the things that eventually becomes the earth. And it was spinning, and everything was dark. It wasn't in evil darkness because of some past destruction. It was just dark. There was no light. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. We say, how can that be? See, people say, well, Jesus was the light. He gave light. Well, there was no light yet. Here it was dark. The earth was dark. Okay? So if God's presence, whatever, would always be light. The Holy Spirit would be light right there. He's light. But he said there was darkness. So in verse 3, it says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. Now, this is a very big controversy, because in day 4, we know that God then creates the sun and the moon. So what did God create on the first day of creation? Well, I believe personally he probably created the sun. He didn't name it the sun. He hadn't created the moon yet. He hadn't created the stars. He just made the sun. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. Well, how do you separate light from darkness? Well, the absence of light is dark. So I think as the earth is rotating, as it was originally created, it's rotating, there's a source of light. I believe it's the sun. I can't prove that. I just think it's the most logical thing to say that's what he created, and later he named it and put it in put everything else in. So again, the earth is without form and void, so is the universe. All these things are not in the universe. It's blank out there. He just created the space. Then he's going to fill the space. So he creates the light. I believe it's the sun, like I said. God saw the light was good. I said, oh, that's cool. I like light. God separated the light from the darkness. Right? So how did he do that? Because of the rotation of the earth. So on the opposite side of the earth was dark. From the sun, the opposite side of the sun was dark. And then as it spun around, it would become light and go, right? And he says that to this right here. First of all, he said in verse 5, God called the light day. Now this is one of the latest views. I'd never heard this before. Dr. Walter Kaiser, John Lennox, and these guys are good, solid Christians. I love John Lennox. I think he's really good. I love his apologetics. He's got a good heart, good guy. But he believes, I think he's the one that teaches this as well. Stephen Myers. There's a number of people, probably Hugh Ross. All of the famous old earth teachers would teach something like this, believe something like this. So God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So what they do with verse 5 is they say, see, the whole point of Genesis and the whole point of day, right, is what does a day mean? Because what the old earthers are saying, well, a day could be billions of years, or the day could mean this gap between it. A day could be a short period of time, long period of time. All of these things, all their views on it, But basically what they're doing in every one of these cases is they're trying to defend an old earth creation to get along with science. That's simply what they do. Hugh Ross, I'm sure he's a good guy. I've seen him. I saw him earlier. He's not probably as caustic as he was earlier in his ministry. But he's still, he was a complete evolutionist when he got saved. That was his worldview. He was an evolutionist. And he never let go of that worldview. I don't know if he's ever read Genesis with an objective eye. It's very difficult when you have a worldview that's so committed to it. Now, some would say that's the same with young earth creationists. Well, maybe that's true. But one of us is wrong. Somebody's presuppositions are wrong. And I think the presuppositions go back to why we're wrong. Naturalism, uniformity, all of those that I've talked about many times. But they're trying to say because the word day here is used as 12 hours, or half a 24-hour period, then the word day does not always mean a 24-hour period. Well, that's really kind of silly, because what is he doing here? He said God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. He's not redefining day. He's actually defining what a 24-hour period is. He's actually defining day. Daylight is the part when it's light, but a day and night together make a day. And he says that at the end of this verse. He said that, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. Jewish Shabbat starts sundown on Friday and ends sundown on Saturday. Evening and morning. It's a Jewish practice. That's what they do. That's why they practice it that way. They consider Saturday to begin at midnight or at dusk on Friday. And it ends on dusk on Saturday. Our Saturday. Right? That's Shabbat. That's the Sabbath. He's not making day to mean a different word. He's just defining what a day is. Daylight and night. Ask any child. What's a day? Well, we have sun comes up and sun goes down. We get up, sun's again. Right? It's a day. That's a day. 24 hours. We know that. The earth rotated once. Here we go. Why did it rotate once? Because there was darkness. Why is there darkness? Because the light was on the other side. Now, the moon gives us some light. The moon wasn't there on the first day, but, it was, it came about. So basically, this is just saying, just simply, there's nothing in this. You can't, see, this is the thing. People look at somebody tell me, well, you have such an empty, shallow definition of day. It's not empty and shallow. It's just what it says. He's calling the light part of day. Of course, we call it daylight or daytime. Do we mean it's only 12? Do we mean it's not a day? Well, technically, we mean it's the daylight part of a day. Okay? It's like you strain at gnats and you swallow camels. This is just simply a definition. It's not a new way. Oh, we found a way where day doesn't mean 24 hours. No, that's I don't know how to describe it. It's like, look, you really just are missing the point. And for greatest theologians, as some of these people are, it astounds me that they go to this. All right, verse 6. And again, I'm not mad at them, but I'm just saying, look, let's be honest about our interpretation of the Bible. And God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and then let us separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. So somehow, we don't know exactly what this is, but there is, it was believed for a long time there was a canopy. There still could have been, even that we don't understand it, that God separated water from above the earth so that there's water in the atmosphere above the earth. He created the atmosphere, basically. So God, and there was and God called the expanse heaven. So early in verse 1, he says he created the heavens and the earth. So is he recreating? No. He's telling us the details of what he did. He called the expanse heaven. So he created the heavens, the atmosphere, what we see as space. And there's water in space. And there was water in space then. Maybe it was the water part of the flood of the earth. We don't know for sure. I don't know. I don't have an answer. But I don't have to have an answer for everything. I don't have to understand everything that God did and exactly what he meant in every situation in the Bible to believe it. It's not based on that. Anyway, and what does he say in verse 8? God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning. What? The second day. By the way, there's 410 times outside of Genesis 1 and 2 where the word day is used with a numeral. Every time but 1 or 2, it means a 24-hour day. Now, how do you know that? Last week I read verses to you that said that. We'll read one in a minute here that'll show you in chapter 2. Well, it's clear it didn't mean a 24-hour day. It meant a period of time. And it can mean a period of time. Back in my father's day, how long is that? Well, the Bible says, even to this day they believe that. Does he mean that literal day? No, he's mean to this period of time, people still believe that this is what happened over there, or why this was called that. It's throughout the text. But it's clear that it doesn't mean a 24-hour day. There's no reason to take this text and say it doesn't mean a 24-hour day unless you're trying to get along with the scientific worldview. This is why I say they don't get along. You can't fit them together. I'm sorry. It may cause you to run away from the faith, and well, if you run away, you didn't really understand and believe in the first place, and you really better repent first and really give your heart to God and let the Holy Spirit be the one who talks to you and speaks to you and shows you these things. Look, it is a contradiction. I'm sorry, it is, and I don't think it's going to be resolved by reading day into all these things. So there was evening and the morning, the second day, day 2. Verse 9, and God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered into one place. What waters? Well, the waters that are all over the earth. And let them all be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. So basically, he sucked, you can see the waters moving all into one place, gathering, and all that's left, all that mineral that was spinning around on day 1, all of that dirt, all of that becomes the earth. That's much more complex than dirt. You got the crust of the earth, you got the volcanic activity, you got the lava flow underneath, you got crust, but basically he created the landmass and separated it from the water. And it was so, and God called the dry land earth. And the waters that were gathered together he called seas, and God saw that it was good. By the way, there were plural seas. But it was all in one place, but it was somehow all connected. And we don't know exactly, but I believe it was a Pangea. I believe in the Pangea. I believe there was one landmass pretty much. You had inland oceans. You had not oceans, but inland lakes, large lakes. Probably the Sahara Desert was a lake. Most deserts would have been lakes at that time. But we don't know that for sure either. It's just a speculation. We just don't know. They don't know. Nobody knows. And we spend our time trying to figure all this stuff out. I'm going, let's just read the book and buy the book, accept it, get these principles right, and maybe we can live our lives in a more helpful way. Verse 11, and God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and tree bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its own kind. And God saw that it was good. And that was evening and morning, the third day. So what he does on day 2, he separates it. On day 3, he creates seeds, right? And he creates plants, or he creates plants with seeds, and he causes them to grow. Now, in a natural world, from a natural perspective, even if you had the seed, you planted the seed, if you want to have a fruit tree that's going to produce fruit, it's going to take years, right? Maybe 5-10 years before it actually gets fruit, depending on how well it's taken care of. Here, everything grows rapidly, and is able to produce fruit. Then you say, well, that can't happen. Well, no, it's because it's not natural. This is not naturalism. We're not explaining this from a natural perspective. What we're seeing is God established the laws of growth, the laws of food, the laws of living things. He's establishing them. I believe what he did, and I use this phrase, it's an accelerated natural process. So it's not like God magically made the trees. I believe he took the trees and they were seedlings and he grew them. I believe that he grew them in a day. He grew them rapidly. They just went through. There was a movie which probably a lot of the people have never seen, but it was Spock. And I think it was called Genesis or something. No, it wasn't called that one, but it was, I don't remember the name of it. But in this, they had the Project Genesis. And Genesis was, they had invented this thing that would fly to a dead planet and land there and just rapidly grow the planet. And it would just grow and grow and grow and grow. Right? All in just like a matter of 24 hours or less, you had this complete. And of course, in this case, the planet continued to grow and destroyed itself, right? It outgrew its life or whatever. But anyway, it happened. It was just a theory. But I think that's sort of what God did. Not that he destroyed it, but that he caused it to grow quickly. So you had plants and trees and all these things on day one, on day 3 of creation. So there was food there when Adam came, and 3 days later, he had food to eat. And he created a principle. I call them smart seeds. You take this little tiny thing. I mean, you could carve seeds. Get wood and carve them and put all the little lines, put everything, and put them in the ground. And what do? They rot. Take that seed that God made in the tree, in the principle of the tree, right? It's in the tree. So when it falls to the ground, it goes in the ground, it dies, and it produces another tree. I mean, we call that death. It's buried, and it comes back to life and produces another. Those are smart seeds. That's what God did with all of this. This was incredible what he did. In a day, this all happened. I believe he accelerated, and I believe it slowed down for our taste today, for where we're at today. Some people believe the opposite, that was normal and we're living in an abnormal world. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Point of it is that he caused this to grow one way or the other. It was the natural speed, and it slowed it down for us. There was a supernatural speed, and then it slowed down for the way it is today. All right, verse 14. And God said, let there be lights. Oh, excuse me, I didn't read it. Verse 13. This is just a reminder. If you haven't figured out what a day is yet, you're still wondering in chapter 3, verse 3. And there was evening. Again, there was the evening time in the morning, the third day, the third 24-hour period. If this phrase wasn't there, you could maybe argue that these are ages of time or something else. But with the numeral, number 1, it almost always means a 24-hour day. When you add this phrase, there is no chance on the face of the earth it doesn't mean 24 hours. People just ignore that. And this is kind of what happens. We don't like conflict. And we also don't like to be, in conflict with the world. We want to get along with the world. We want to think that, we don't want them to think that we're stupid. We don't want to be laughed at and mocked for our beliefs. And they will laugh at you and mock if you have this belief. Mock you if you believe in a young earth. They just will. If you're a Christian and have an old earth belief, I don't think it fits any better. They still mock you behind your back. But the fact of the matter is, at least you seem to get along with the world. And it's about getting along with science in this. And I think science is wrong again. All right. So the third day. God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of heaven to give light upon the earth. Now, did he do that? Was that the creation of the sun? Could be. I think it was created earlier. Maybe he just created a light source, and now he put all that light into the sun. But there had to be a light source that acted as a day that allowed for there to be a 24-hour day in the earlier passage. And it was so. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and morning, again, defining the day, the 4th day. So we need on the 4th day. So we have a heavens or universe that's really pretty empty, or there's nothing there because he hadn't created the stars yet. So he now creates the sun and the moon. Is he creating it or renaming it? I personally believe he's not creating it, but again, I don't have to know. I don't really understand that fully, but every day, every time he creates something, he ends up with the same phrase. And there was evening and there was morning the 4th day. So even on the first day of creation, there was evening and morning. So he's saying somehow that existed. He wasn't reinterpreting day to mean something else. There was a light source, there was a circular earth that was revolving, and you had day and light. Darkness is the absence of light. So there wasn't light, there was light, and then light on the opposite wasn't there. So I believe he created and he named it, maybe put it in the atmosphere at this point in time, in the firmament. It may have been that that's what he did. We don't know for sure. But again, I don't think it gives, just because they say, well, there wasn't a real day until the sun was created. Well, that's not true. Because whatever source of light there was, it was able to, number one, help plants grow. It was able to help the plants grow because they had to have light. So there was a source of light that was there that would have either mimicked the sun, imitated the sun, or was the sun. And there had to be light every day and night, because this is what he's saying. In verse 20, and God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly across the earth, across the expanse of heavens. So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, and with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and morning the first day. Have you ever seen those videos where they just show these swarms of fish? Just, I don't know how many millions of fish. And the earth is filled, the oceans are filled with that. Even after the flood, even after all that destruction, they keep producing. How many people live on fish every day, right? The great sea creatures, what was that? Well, some believe that was dragons. Some believe that was the creation of dinosaurs, that there were some dinosaurs that were created there. Very possible. That's a whole nother something to talk about. Verse 24, and God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds. Why the earth? Dust to dust, ashes to ashes. Where does everything happen when it dies? It goes back to dust. It deteriorates back to what it was made out of the earth. The earth itself. Is that a scientific principle? Doesn't everything do that? How is that just a poetry? It's not poetry. How is the swarms of animals just poetry? The swarms of birds? How about trees that produce fruit? Is that poetry? Well, I mean, it could be said in the form of poetry, but it's fact. Everything reproduces after its kind. How is that not a fact? God made the earth, So he said, we read that. Verse 25, and God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Now, we don't know exactly what a kind is, but certainly a dog and a cat are not the same kind. Right? There's nothing that would say that. So a kind, maybe there was one dog, and then out of that, even today, how many species of dog are there all over the place? But they're all dogs. A dog is a dog is a dog is a dog. Cat is a cat is a cat is a cat. Human is a human. Neanderthals, they were human beings. They have all the characteristics of it, but they have a different head shape. Doesn't mean they weren't human. They were some sort of maybe ethnic, as Dr. Lyle says, group. Intermarriage among a group produces, maybe a certain style, and it does always. But they're still humans. God saw that it was good. Verse 26, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. This is a fundamental doctrine, isn't it? We have all kinds of people that they think, well, I'm a woman, or I'm a man, or I'm a cat, or I'm all of these things that people's minds and where their minds are going. Why? Because they don't understand the book. The book's clear. God says he made you a male or female. I'm not mad at these people. They're not my enemies. But they're not living in reality. This is reality. This is not a story that was told that we don't really have to believe the details. That's a detail. We were created in the image of God. We have God's image in us. We think and act as God does in many ways. Not that we have his power and his eternalness, but we are like God. And we are male and female. Everyone is male and female. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Do we have dominion over those things? Pretty much. We've wiped out how many species of animal life because we have dominion over them. And God said, behold, and not that God wanted them wiped out and that we shouldn't have some sort of exercise of restraint, but they all are under our authority. "Behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast on the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, the breath of life, I have given every plant for green food." God made us originally vegetarians. See, so why are you a vegetarian? No, absolutely not. I'm a carnivore. Why? Because of the flood. Something changed in the flood that now God said eat meat. I believe they were eating meat before the flood. They were destroying God's planet in a number of different ways. But we were originally supposed to be vegetarian. After this age ends, and when in the new earth, in the new heaven and new earth, we'll be back to vegetarian. But right now we're not. If you're vegetarian now, you're probably misunderstanding and probably not eating exactly what you ought to eat. Again, that's a whole discussion. You can yell at me and write me comments if you disagree, but I think the Bible's teaching that. And verse 31, "And God saw everything that he made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day." So we have 6 days of creation. Now there's no chapter break here, technically, in the Hebrew. In chapter 2, verse 1 says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done. And he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. God blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation." Now later on he talks about, in Exodus, he talks about the specifics of this day. I don't really have time. I'm over time right now. We're going pretty long. But basically, God rested on this day. It didn't mean, people believe this is a day of rest. And I really don't have time to get into that. But I believe it meant the seventh day was a day of rest. We are to rest one day a week. It's principle. We don't have to do it on the Sabbath. We can do it on Sunday. But we have to rest one day a week and honor God for his creation. That's why we did it. God rested. What does it mean? Was he tired? I don't know. I doubt he was tired. But he did expel energy and do things. It wasn't just, he spoke it into existence. It's powerful. I don't know how God works. I don't understand that. But he rested. It means he stopped from his day of creation. So God says to us, work 6 days and take a break. Now, I believe that's what it means. All right. So when we go through this chapter, again, exegetically, there's no gap. There's no millions of years between each day. It's not there. It just goes on from day to day to day. It's a simple narrative. I mean, is it narrative when he rested and the earth was finished and the host of them? Is that narrative? Yeah, of course it is. Right? I mean, this is how it works. Now, sometime we need to maybe teach through Genesis chapter 2. Maybe I will do that next week. And teach through Genesis chapter 2 and address the idea of rest. I think I'll do that next week. But right now we can see, just simply from looking at the text and looking at all the details of it, are there conflicts? Yes. Was the sun created on day 1 or was it created on day 4? What does that say? What does that mean? Well, again, you can say, well, it literally means it was created on day 4, but he also said he created a source of light, so we don't know what that is. So I know for sure he created a source of light that I think was able to provide what the earth needed. And again, maybe he just created light and then the earth was already moving, so there was darkness, so he just created that whole scenario that we have darkness being the absence of light. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying this is a solid exegesis of the chapter 1 of Genesis. It's very clear. I don't think it's that questionable at all. So I just want to say this again. You can be a non-believer or you can be a Christian and believe opposite of this. But I'm saying, from my perspective, this is a dogmatic teaching. It's very clear. And I think we have to take one more week. I'm sorry. So next week we'll talk about the day of rest. What is the Sabbath rest? We'll talk about that idea. There's some interesting thoughts with that. Sabbath day of rest. And what about Genesis 2? Is it a different account of creation? So we're going to do that next week. Anyway, God bless you. Thanks for joining us. Look, if you like this video, would you subscribe to it on YouTube? You can go to our Facebook. You can like it there. Follow us. You can go to our website and you can subscribe there. We've got some interesting things coming up. I do want to do a class on the gifts of the Holy Spirit. So if people out there are interested in that, please go to our website and sign up for that. And anyway, other than that, God bless you. I hope you have a great week and hope you grow closer to Jesus. If you like this stuff, would you please send me a comment and encourage us that way? And of course, if you want to support us, we're always available to take support. We do have a place to do that on the website. Anyway, God bless you. Have a great day. And I'm going to see if I can log out of this thing here and get done with the day. There it is. All right, well, you have a great day. Take care now. Bye-bye.